Ultimate is a 7A-side team sports played with the flying disc. It is played on a rectangular field about half width of a football field, with an end zone at each end. The objective of each team is to score a goal by having a player catch a pass in the end zone that they are attacking. A thrower may not run with the disc, but may pass the disc in any direction to any teammate. Anytime a pass is incomplete, a turnover occurs and the other team shall take position and attempt to score in the opposite end zone. Games are typically played to a 15 goals or around 100 minutes. Ultimate is self-appreciated and non-contact. The spirit of the game guides how players appreciate Rule the number game 1. And conduct themselves spirit of the field. Game. Ultimate is a non-contact, self-officiated sports. All players are responsible for administering and adhering to the rules. It is trusted that no player will intentionally break the rules, thus there are no harsh penalties for inadvertent breaches, but rather a method of resuming play in a manner which stimulate what would most likely have occurred had there been no breach. Players should be mindful of the fact that they are acting as referees in any abbreviation between teams. Highly competitive play is encouraged but should never sacrifice the mutual respect between players. The following actions are examples of good spirit. Retracting a call when no longer believe the call was correct. Checking in with an opponent on the sideline after a continuous interaction. Complimenting an opponent for a good play or spirit. The following actions are clear violations of the spirit of the game and must be avoided. Dangerous play and aggressive behavior, intentional fouling or other intentional rule breaches, taunting or intimidating opposing players, celebrating disrespectfully after scoring, and malmaking calls in retaliation to an opponent call. Teams are guardians of the spirit of the game and must take responsibility for teaching their players and rules and good spirit. In the case where a novice player is involved in a breach and does not know the rules, experienced players should assist to explain the breach. An experienced player who offers advice on rules and guides on field arbitration may supervise games involving beginners or younger players. Calls should be discussed by the players directly involved in play and by players who had best perspective on the play. If a player was not directly involved believes that a teammate has made an incorrect call or caused a foul or violation, players and captains are solely responsible for making and resolving all calls. If after discussion players cannot agree or it is not clear and obvious what occurred in a play or what would most likely have occurred in a play, the desk must be returned to the last non-disputed thrower. Number 2. Playing field. The playing field is a rectangular area with dimensions and zone as shown on figure and it should be essentially flat, free of obstruction, and afford reasonable player safety. Third is the equipment. Any flying desk acceptable to both captains may be used. WFDF may maintain a list of approved desks recommended for use. Each player must wear a uniform that distinguishes their team. No player may wear items of clothing or equipment that reasonably could harm the wearer or other players or impede an opponent's ability to play. Fourth is point, goal, and game. A game consists of a number of points. Each point ends with the scoring of a goal. A game is finished and won by the first team to score 15 goals. A game is separated into two periods of playing called halves. The halftime occurs when a team first scores 8 goals. The first point of each half starts with the half starts. Number 5 is the teams. Each team will put a maximum of 7 players and a minimum of 5 players on the field during each point. Each team must designate a captain and a spirit captain to represent the team. A team may make a limited substitution after a goal is scored and before their team signals readiness for the pool. Number 6 is starting a game. Representatives of the two teams fairly determine which teams first chooses either whether to receive or throw the initial ball or which end zone they will initially defend. The other team is given the remaining choice. At the start of the second half, these initial selections are switched. Number 7, the pull. At the start of the game, after halftime or after a score, play commences with a throw by the defense called a pull. The pull may be made of only after both teams have signaled their readiness by having the puller and a player on offense raise a hand above their head. After signaling readiness, all offensive players must stand with one foot on their defending goal line without changing location relative to one another until the pull is released. After signaling readiness, all defensive players must keep their feet entirely behind the vertical plane of the goal line until the plane is released. If the team breaches 7.3 or 7.4, the opposing team may call a violation. Offside. These must be called before the offense touches the desk. 7.8 applies. As soon as the desk is released, all players may move in any direction. No player on the defensive team may touch the desk after a pull until a member of the offensive team contacts the desk or desk hits the ground. In an offensive player in bounds or out of bounds touches the desk before it hits the ground, and the offensive team plays subsequently establish possession that is turnover. Number 8 is state of play. Play is dead and no turnover is possible. Play that is not dead is live. The thrower may not transfer position of the desk during dead play to another player. Any player may attempt to stop a desk from rolling or sliding after it has hit the ground. After a turnover and after the pull, an offensive player must move at walking pace or faster to direct retrieve the desk and establish a pivot point. Number 9. Stall count. The marker administers a stall count on the thrower by announcing stalling and then counting from 1 to 10. The interval between the start of each number in the stall count must be at least 1 second. The stall count must be clearly communicated to the thrower. The marker may only start and continue a stall count when a play is live until a pivot is established after turnover. If the marker moves beyond the appropriate 3-meter radius or a different player becomes the marker, the stall count must be restarted and stalling 1. After a stoppage in a play, the stall count is resumed as follows. After to restart a stall count at maximum n, where n is determined by 952, 954, or 20.6, 20.3.6 means the following: 9.6.1 if x is the last agreed number fully uttered prior to the call, then the stall count measures at stalling x plus 1 or stalling n, whichever of those numbers is lower. Number 10. The check. Whenever play stops during a point for a foul violations, consistent turnover, specified turnover, contested goal, stoppage, discussion, or at the completion of a timeout, play must restart as quickly as possible with a check. The check may only be delayed for a discussion of a call. Player positioning after for a call. Any player may briefly extend a stoppage of play to fix faulty equipment, but active play may not be stopped for this purpose. Prior to the check, the person checking the desk in and the nearest opposition player must verify their own team mates are ready and positioned as per 10.2. If there is a necessary delay in checking the desk, in the opposition may give a warning to restart the play with a check when the thrower has the desk. A player may call a violation regarding to the check if an opponent attempts a pass without an appropriate check as per 10.6 or restarts play without verification from their nearest opposition player. 11 out of bounds. The entire playing field is in bounds. The perimeter lines are not part of the playing field and are out of bounds. All non-players are part of the out of bounds area. The out of bounds area are consists of the ground which is not in bounds and everything in contact with it except for defensive players who are always considered in bounds. An offensive player who is not out of bounds is bounds. The following are out of bounds turnover and no catch is deemed to have occurred. Any part of an offensive receiver is out of bounds when they contact the desk, or after catching the desk while airborne. An offensive receiver's first contact is out of bounds while still in contact with the desk. A desk is in bounds once play is live, or when play starts or restarts. A desk becomes out of bounds when it first contacts the out of bounds area or contacts an out of bounds offensive player. The desk may fly outside a parameter line and return to the playing field, and players may go out of bounds to make a play on the desk. 12. Receivers and positioning. A catch occurs when a player has no spinning desk trapped between a list of two body parts. A catch can enable a player to establish possession of the desk. After establishing possession, that player becomes a thrower. If offensive and defensive players catch the desk simultaneously, the offense retains possessions. A player in an established position is entitled to remain in that position and must not be contracted by an opposing player. Every player is entitled to occupy any position on the field not occupied by any opposing player. All players must attempt to avoid contact with other players, and there is no situation where a player may justify initiating contact. The player who initiates contact is deemed to be a player who arrived at the point of the contact after opponent had already established a legitimate position at that point, or adjusted their movements in a way that created an unavoidable contact with an opponent moving in a legal manner. Some minor contact may occur as two or more players move towards a single point simultaneously. Players may not use their arms or legs to obstruct the movement of opposing players. No player may be physically assist the movement of another player, nor use an item of equipment or object to assist in contacting the desk. 13. Turnovers. A turnover that transfers position of the desk from one team to other occurs when the desk contacts the ground while it is not in the position of an offensive player. A turnover that transfers possession of the desk from one team to other team and result in stoppage of play occurs when there is an accepted offensive receiving false. If a player determines a turnover has occurred, they must make the appropriate call immediately. If the opposite disagrees, they may call contest and a play must stop. If after discussion players cannot agree or it is unclear what occurred in the play, the desk must be returned to the last non-disputed thrower. After a stall-out call, if the thrower still has possession of the desk, but they believe a fast count occurred in such a manner that they did not have reasonable opportunity to call fast count before a stall out. 14 is scoring. A goal is scored if an unbounced player catches a legal pass, and if a player believes a goal has been scored, they may call a goal and play stops. After a contested obstructed goal play must restart with the check, and the call is deemed to have been made when the player establishes possession. If a player is in possession of the desk end up with their selected pivot point behind the attacking goal line without scoring a goal according to 14.1, the player must establish a pivot point at the nearest location on the goal line. The time at which a goal is deemed to have been scored is when the player establishes possession. Number 15, calling fouls, infractions, and violations. A breach of the rules due to non-minor contract between two or more opposing players is a foul. A breach of the rules regarding a marketing of or travel breach is an infraction. Every other breach of the rules is violation. Only the player fouled may claim a foul by calling foul. In general, only the thrower may claim an infraction by calling the specific name of the infraction. Any opposing player may claim a violation by calling the specific name of a violation or violation. When a foul or violation call is made that stop play, player must stop play by visibly and audibly. Calls must be made immediately after the breach is recognized. After a player initiates a stoppage incorrectly, including the mishearing a call, not knowing the rules, or not making a call immediately. If the player against whom the foul, infraction, or violation has been called disagrees that it occurred or does not think this is correct call, they may call contest. If a player making any call subsequently determines that their call was incorrect, they can retract call by calling retracted to stall count to resume as if any accepted breach has been caused by the player. If multiple breaches occur on the same play or before play stops, the outcomes should be resolved in reverse consequence. Players are encouraged to use the WFDF hand signals to communicate all calls. Number 16. Continuation after a call. Whenever a foul or violation call is made, or a player attempts to stop play in a way, play stops immediately and no turnover is possible. If a foul or violation is called against the thrower and the thrower attempts a pass or is called the thrower during the act of throwing or is called or occurs when the desk is in the air. Regardless of when any call is made, if the players involved from both teams agree that event or call did not affect the outcome, the play stands. This rule is not superseded by any other rule. Number 17 is the fouls. So there are 9 different kinds of fouls. First is the dangerous playing, receiving fouls, strip fouls, blocking fouls, force out fouls, defensive throwing fouls or marking, offensive throwing fouls or thrower, indirect fouls, offsetting fouls. Those are the 9 fouls or the 9 kinds of fouls. 18 is infractions and violation. So there are marking infractions, travel infractions, and peak violations. Number 19 is the safety stoppages. First, is injury stoppages or stoppage. An injury may be called by the injured player or by any player on the injured team or player teams. And if the injury was not caused by an opponent, the player must choose either to be substituted or to charge their own team with a timeout. Next is the technical stoppage. Any player who recognizes a condition that endangers players, including if a player has an open or bleeding wound, should call a technical stoppage by calling technical or stop, or play must stop immediately. Next is if a player is substituted after an injury or due to illegal or faulty equipment, the opposing team may also choose to substitute one player. 20 is timeouts. The player calling a timeout must form a T with their hands or with one hand and the desk, and should call timeout to opposition players.